Here we go, and it kicks off, ladies and gentlemen. You ready?
You're asking too much often to rewrite like the idea that when someone is born, there is a default setting for humans, male and female. Not everyone is. Now, a real conservative would say, no, everyone is. I would never say that.
But
I think
there are chromosomal spectrums.
There's a default setting,
hermaphroditism.
but then there.
In this video, Tim Pool reacts to a recent interview on Real Time with Bill Maher. Tim Pool is shocked at the absurdly woke statements that actor Jon Cryer said to Bill Maher. Actually, even Bill Maher had to reel him in. With that, let's watch Tim Pool destroy woke Jon Cryer over his unoriginal leftist talking points.
From the Daily Mail, let's talk about our good friend Bill Maher.
Hey, Bill.
Bill Maher aghast as he shuts down iconic sitcom star for floating disgusting reason that Trump beat Harris. Oh boy.
If you don't want to talk about that politics at all,
Well,
I shouldn't, because I really started this podcast to get away from it. So you're right.
This is Jon Cryer.
yes.
But I don't know. Sometimes people say things that trigger me. And of course, we just had the election, and I feel like my conscience is very clear. I warned everybody about Trump, and then I warned them. Then I warned them about what would get him reelected, which was stupid wokeness, which is what got him reelected. So I feel my conscience is very clear that I told you, and I told you, and I told you, and I lost fans for it. You know, lots of the super woke.
Maybe it's because you're wrong.
Like I'm not woke enough for them. Yeah, but like I think I had it right. Like that kind of stuff is what lost the election for the Democrats. It's in all.
Maybe part of it. I don't know. I think a lot.
They have polling on it.
Well, I think it's inflation. I think Americans hate inflation.
That certainly was
They hate
part of it.
inflation. They hate riots, and they hate black women.
And
they hate trans people.
Oh God, John, we're not
Dude,
gonna.
they just spent hundreds of millions
They
of dollars
don't hate
demonizing trans people, and that's disgusting.
Yeah,
That
we
is
shouldn't talk politics.
Okay, then you shouldn't.
I mean,
Great.
Bill's cooked.
We don't have to.
No, and this, you know, I mean, I have this.
Okay, so the first thing I'll say is they do hate inflation.
Yes.
They do hate riots.
Yes.
They don't hate black women.
No.
The trans issue is not about trans people. It's about the gender ideology as a whole. But I love how Bill just breaks down like, oh, it's happening again.
Right in front of my eyes. You've learned nothing.
Yeah.
No, learned nothing at all. I mean, Jon Cryer looks good, though, right?
You know, we talk about woke leftists all the time, but I always think they're like a pretty small minority that really believe all the far leftist garbage that goes around out there. But I had some kind of reaction to what I just heard. It makes me sad. Like that there are people out there that really buy all this stuff. And as off base as Jon Cryer is, I actually think he's right. I think, you know, inflation probably played a bigger role in Trump's win than the wokeness stuff. But the woke stuff was a variable that ultimately put Trump in the White House. But anyway, what I can't fathom is what reason on earth would anyone say that, you know, the right wing or Americans, he said everybody, why would people say that they hate black women? The only things I can come up with are that black women voted at an extremely high rate for Kamala Harris, and that Kamala Harris is supposedly black, and if you didn't vote for her, it has to be because she's a black woman. It can't be because she's an incompetent boob. But aren't the people he's most insulting black women that voted for Donald Trump? Because what I hear him saying is these people have to be so stupid to not see through all Trump's BS and how much he hates them that they're so dumb that they had to vote for Donald Trump. I don't know. I that's just my take on what he said. If we have any black American women out there that voted for Donald Trump, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I'm not white knighting like a leftist. It's just how I heard what he said. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Sure.
I didn't even like a Wilt Chamberlain.
I didn't even recognize him.
He doesn't look like he's, you know, suffering from HIV or anything like that.
Here we go, and it kicks off, ladies and gentlemen. You ready?
You're asking too much often to rewrite like the idea that when someone is born, there is a default setting for humans, male and female. Not everyone is. Now, a real conservative would say, no, everyone is. I would never say that.
But
I think
there
what
are
a liberal
chromosomal,
says
there are
is,
chromosomal
yes,
spectrums.
there's a default.
There's
There's a default setting,
hermaphroditism.
but then there's a whole other section, and that's great, and we should protect those people. But don't pretend there isn't also a default setting. And you can't rewrite the world so that every baby is just a jump ball. Oh, it could be anything. No, if it's got a dick, it's probably a boy. And if it's not, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that in a compassionate way.
Well, yeah,
but we'll also be apprised of the idea that children don't know shit about anything. Yes, sometimes it is obvious, and we should address it that way. But I mean, kids, Christ Almighty! I mean, the idea that I would, as a child, would have had to have dealt with something like this.
Well, again, the people that go through it don't say this is the life I want. No parent wants to be in the midst of those choices. It's
Some
terrifying.
kids these days actually just do want to be trans. It's cooler, John.
I don't
it's
agree.
a thing.
Who cares if you agree?
I don't agree.
Come on.
I don't agree with Bill Maher.
I know.
That's the name of the show tonight.
Well, your eyes are not open to that. I think.
Okay.
There
Hollywood
are
bubble,
some
man.
kids.
Yeah.
Especially, why is it like so much more prevalent, like here than Indiana?
Well,
are they suppressing it there?
Good
Maybe
point.
a little.
Yeah, there's
But
a societal suppression, but it's like left-handedism. Left-handed
it's a
was
terrible example.
left-handed was
Worst
suppressed
argument ever.
for for thousands of years amongst human beings. But
actually
once
not true.
Very untrue. Apparently in the 30s,
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
scientists basically said there's no left-handedness doesn't actually do anything
guy
bad.
kills his own argument.
Left-handedness shot
With
up.
this boss.
People just stopped training themselves to be right-handed. And this has happened societally before.
So this is where we're currently at. They've learned nothing. They will continue doing the same things.
Amen.
And I say if that allows us to win and gets us through the midterms, thank you, John Cryer. I appreciate it.
And talk about his regurgitated talking points. Like, at least you'd think maybe there'd be some nuance. And it's like, you can see it in his eyes that he's not going to get invited back to these cocktail parties in Hollywood if he doesn't speak up because, Bill is hitting on just all of the basic points. And it's just the same thing. We've heard it, for 8 years? 10 years now? It's the same talking points. And thank God they've learned nothing, like you said.
I mean, I don't know that I want to say thank God, because I think that the country would be better off if they weren't, if they had learned something and we didn't have these stupid fights about, whether or not children are born a sex or not. Like the idea that just the concept.
Yeah, if you're an actor in Hollywood, you are so desperate for the approval of everyone else in Hollywood and so fearful that you won't get that next job you go after if you say the wrong thing. So you memorize talking points, like they said, that have been debunked forever. Like they said, they're 10 years or more older. They just make zero sense. Comparing left-handedness to this spike in transgenderism, give me a freaking break. And he's going to sit there with a straight face and try to tell us that indoctrination, grooming, messaging to children isn't the reason for the exponential increases year over year in kids identifying as gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans. It's because kids are being taught this stuff. They're being told essentially you get to choose whatever gender you want to be at a very early age when they shouldn't be thinking about that stuff. They should be thinking about being a kid and figuring out how to be a human being in the world. And you notice they also, to the uneducated or the unwoken up, I know that doesn't sound right, they say that they love to talk about the exceptions rather than the rule. And when he talked about, when Bill Maher was saying, look, there's a default setting, male or female, there's some abnormalities. Those abnormalities are, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's infinitesimal compared to the number of people that are just born male or female. And he was like hermaphrodite or intersex or chromosomal spectrum. I guarantee if you pressed him at all on any of those dumb things he threw out, he couldn't go any further in the conversation because that's all they are is talking points. To someone, like I said, who's not woken up to what's really going on and who just doesn't follow this stuff that closely, it probably sounds like an okay argument because, he used some scientific terms in there and he delivered it very calmly and confidently, but it's just all a bunch of nonsense. Anyway, let's get back to the
Concept of assigned a gender at birth. That is absurd.
Every
It's
time
ridiculous.
Alice and I are out you know, she's very pregnant, and people are like, so do you know the gender of the baby? I always respond with, oh, well, we're not going to know for at least 10 years until they tell us. And then everybody laughs because in no reality, like, it's the funniest thing. There's this viral video where there's this like fat leftist woman, and she's like, I'm non-binary. And then someone says, what gender is your cat? And she goes, it's a boy. And they're like, how do you know? And she's like, he has boy parts. And then it's just dead silence for like 30 seconds. It's like, yeah. But I'm not trying to get into all that. The key point here was Bill Maher's mental breakdown as he's realizing, like, there's no escape.
Right.
He's right. There are polls showing that it's not the only reason or even the top reason. Immigration and economics were the top factors. But the Wall Street Journal referred to gender ideology as a sleeper issue. And then you can hear John Cryer immediately go, he may as well have just said, Bill, you've said a thing that will get me kicked out of the cult, so I'm going to pretend to oppose you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Tim said something there that kind of goes back to my initial comments. He said his wife's really pregnant, and people say, oh, do you know the sex of the baby? He says, well, we won't know for 10 years. Everybody laughs. That's why at the beginning I say it's so disheartening to hear someone that sounds like they really believe this stuff, because I just think most sane, normal people would react like the folks Tim says that to. They laugh because we all know it's silly. And I imagine John Cryer knows it's silly too, and everyone else who's pushing for this stuff. But, you know, while John Cryer's motivation is staying relevant in Hollywood, there are other folks, doctors, psychiatrists, they have money motivations, because if you get these people to transition, they need medical care the rest of their lives. It's a money machine for surgeons, psychiatrists. Gender affirming care was never a thing, ever. A psychiatrist, psychologist doesn't affirm what someone thinks about themselves. You talk with them and try to get them to talk out their problems. It's never been a mental health professional's job to affirm anything. It's so silly, but I think you all know that. But we want to hear from you. What do you guys think about what Tim Pool had to say about Bill Maher's interview with John Cryer? Let us know. Anyway, as always, we really appreciate you watching, and we will see you in the next one.